Hi, this is Cal, and this is part 2 of the discussion about audio CD book courses and also the BBC Deutsch Plus course, originally released in 1996, and of which Language Genesis did create a revamp a couple of years ago. Now, originally I only intended to release one part about this discussion, but due to recording it a number of times and having suffered a number of different interruptions, or realising after the recording that it had gone over the 10-minute time limit, I therefore had to do a re-recording, and at the same time I've realised that I didn't manage to get in everything that I wanted to say about the BBC Deutsch Plus course. So this is a continuation about that particular discussion. But first of all, just a quick recap on what I did mention in part 1. I said that audio CD book courses are mainly intended for ab initio learners of the modern foreign language, that they tend to use a topic-based learning scenario as the initial point of departure for the teaching of the language, in recognition of the fact that the majority of people who pick up these types of courses, who purchase this type of CD course, wish to merely gain a general understanding of and knowledge of the different types of vocabulary that would be used for holiday making, would be used by tourists in Germany or a German-speaking country in a number of situations in which those people would find themselves. And I also mentioned that the sequencing of the topics would also bear a similarity with the sequencing of topics used in a language classroom setting, in a language classroom environment, teaching a beginner's course to a handful of ab initio learners within usually further or adult education, not necessarily in mainstream, and that these courses often last for around 6 to 8 weeks, maybe on occasion between 8 and 10 weeks, enough time to cover a number of different topics. And as far as the actual topics themselves is concerned, I also mentioned that the ordering followed a similar route, a similar progression route, starting with greetings, moving on to numbers and letters of the alphabet, applying numbers and letters of the alphabet to different learning scenarios, such as the application of number to the learning of clock times, to dates, to calendar dates, to birthdays, to inquiring about the costs of a particular item or product which an individual might purchase in a shop or anywhere else, to the use of alphabet letters for the spelling of words, to gain a more in-depth understanding about the rules of pronunciation which apply to a modern foreign language, to be able to spell a word for which we might request the translation from either the target language into English or from the mother tongue into the modern foreign language in question, and also if we were in a hotel, to actually be able to spell our name to the receptionist so that he or she could guarantee that the correct person or party had been booked into the hotel. Now, as far as the BBC Deutsch Plus course is concerned, it does have an edge in terms of originality, because there is a story behind it all, and you don't necessarily get this with other audio CD book courses. Where other audio CD book courses are concerned, it may just be a case of a group of people who are, more often than not, all native speakers, are just involved and collaborating in the different dialogues, in the different scenarios, and we don't really know much about these people as individuals, or even if they're actually acting out as different people, and whether as actors of characters, these characters actually have any form of background. But this is actually something which applies to the BBC Deutsch Plus course, since it deals with a 23-year-old Romanian and a non-native speaker of German who has come over to Cologne in the Rhine region, in the former West Germany, to work as a volunteer at a TV and radio station called Prima Plus, who eventually gets promotion because he comes abroad, as I say, with, I think, little or no understanding or knowledge of the German language, but he does get the support he needs from a handful of colleagues who accompany him in different learning situations, in different situative-based scenarios, such as ordering a meal, going out to the pub and ordering a few drinks, helping him with his duties at work, Other people are also very supportive on a daily basis. For example, the receptionist Herr Schiller, who sits downstairs and welcomes Nico all the time and engages him in brief conversations on a reasonably regular basis. And then we find that as the topics actually progress, that Nico is less reliant on these people to be able to actually survive in a number of different situations. One example being the time when Frau Meyer, his superior, asks him to go to the local savings bank to change some money, and despite few miscommunications and hesitations, Nico, as he's called, the 23-year-old from Romania, does indeed survive and comes out of the situation very well indeed. So I think as non-native speakers of German, we can actually relate to Nico and the way in which he gains support from the Germans and Germany itself being represented in a very positive light through this course. It does have a very cheesy edge as well, especially the way in which the two main presenters of the course actually deliver the explanations of the exercises which are to be carried out, and also some of the intonations and some of the things which the native speakers of German on the course actually come out with are indeed very witty. But this is all intended not to be looked upon in a bad way, but to actually appeal, the overall appeal of the course for the potential language learners who might actually decide to go out and buy it, and if they do buy it, will be encouraged by the setup, by the way in which it's engineered, both from a linguistic and a socio-linguistic point of view. It is indeed very appealing and indeed a very popular course. I think we need to be careful in terms of looking at the way in which certain phrases are translated. We need to be aware of the need to translate certain things word for word, because otherwise if we just simply think that this translates literally as that, even if it is a set phrase, then as an independent learner we might actually go away and simply think that this word means this and that word means that, and this will restrict our understanding of how individual words do translate and how they operate within a wider context within, for example, a full sentence. What I've also tried to do in the paper-based resources, because obviously Linguagenesis is not at liberty to reproduce the audio material of the course, not having been given copyright, we can only sell the paper-based resources which we've done on eBay, and the majority of learners have indeed been very satisfied with the results which they've actually yielded from completing the paper-based resources by Linguagenesis, and we've received a great deal of inspiring and positive feedback from those buyers. We do need to be careful, as I say, with word-for-word translations, and we also need to find opportunities, and this is again what Linguagenesis has done, to actually widen the variety of exercises, integrate more an understanding and maintain an equilibrium between the content, the linguistic content, the topic-based content, and also simplified explanations of grammar. Because without an explanation or even a simplified understanding of how a language works and how words come together, we can't progress as quickly as independent learners as we might wish to do. So we do have to be very aware as far as that aspect of the language learning process is concerned. Well, that was part 2, and I will leave it there. If you do have any questions, feel free to send me an email or do post a comment. Cheers.